The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 11th chapter. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench because he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." The Gospel of the Lord. This is one of the most dramatic stories in the Gospels. The trio of siblings, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, are close friends of Jesus. They're disciples, supporters, hosts of his ministry. The death of Lazarus does something to Jesus. It causes something in him to break. My assumption is that Jesus' heart broke at the death of Lazarus. In the preceding verses, we learn that Lazarus and Jesus had a close bond. In fact, when Lazarus first becomes ill, Jesus is not present, and the sisters send him a message saying, "Lord, he whom you love is ill." Jesus had deep feelings for Lazarus and his sisters. They were more than just acquaintances. Jesus' heart also breaks at the words that Mary greets him with. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." You can imagine the many ways those words could have been delivered to Jesus. Maybe the tone included blame, as if Jesus is at fault here. Maybe the tone included disappointment, that Jesus did not come quickly when he was first requested by Mary and Martha. Maybe the tone was outright contempt, that Jesus has failed them. Maybe you're like me, and the idea of letting people down is something that constantly haunts your life. Not living up to the expectation of others is always in the back of your mind, a low-grade anxiety quietly humming in the back of your mind at all times. Hearing the words, he would not have died if you had been here, is perhaps Jesus' greatest fear. He has let them down, not in a small way, but in a way that has resulted in the death of a loved one. You may be a great healer, Jesus, and you may even be Messiah, but you are no longer those things to me. Maybe that's why Jesus wept. Maybe that's why he felt greatly disturbed, because he had failed to live up to the expectations of some of his closest companions. There was also something else about Lazarus' death that disturbed Jesus. When they showed him where he had been for the last 4 days, it was a tomb. It was a cave with a stone lying against it. The detail of 4 days is important because in Jewish belief, the soul leaves the body after 3 days of being dead. In other words, Lazarus is truly, fully lifeless. The soul has departed. When Jesus is brought to Lazarus's grave, he has a premonition. The tomb is a visual omen of things yet to come. Jesus sees his own future, his own death, his own friends grieving again. What disturbs Jesus so greatly is the final enemy he will face: death. When Jesus comes to Lazarus' tomb, he sees the struggle between life and death being played out in front of him, and life has lost. Jesus knows that he can resuscitate Lazarus, but he cannot offer him resurrection. Not yet. Jesus must walk through the valley himself first. Everything Jesus did in his life, death, and resurrection was to provide for another way for the world to exist. A new heaven and a new earth, not bound and restricted by the ways of the old. Staring at the tomb that holds Lazarus, Jesus realizes he's on a mission to wipe every tear from their eyes, where death will be no more, mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away. The mission Jesus is on is to distribute to all people blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of their salvation. Having achieved their righteousness for them, Jesus is on a mission to finally prove that the souls of all people are in the hand of God, and no torment will ever touch them. But until Jesus is done with his earthly mission, he cannot offer to Mary and Martha and Lazarus what they truly deserve. So Jesus weeps. Jesus weeps because he sits in the tension of the already but not yet. He knows what is needed. He knows how to achieve it. He knows what it will take. But he cannot offer it yet. Jesus wept, and so do we. You also weep at the sting of loss and grief. You also struggle with not living up to the expectations of others. You also misjudge what you can truly offer someone when you fall short in their eyes. You have faces that you will not see, and voices that you will not hear, and hands that you will not hold. Perhaps you've even echoed Mary's words: God, if you had been here, they would not have died. Jesus does what he can do, and Lazarus hops out of the tomb with grave clothes still stuck to him, a sort of symbol of the imperfect resuscitation that Jesus can offer in that moment, because Lazarus will have to die again. And the sadness and the loss and grief and trauma will all have to be experienced again by Mary and Martha. The cycle of death is never ending. But it will end. The endings will one day meet their ending. The death of death will one day be fully actualized. A feast of all saints is coming. And God will destroy the shroud that is cast over all peoples, the sheet that is spread over all nations. God will swallow up death forever. Then the Lord God will wipe away the tears from all faces, and the disgrace of the people will be taken away from all the earth. For the Lord has spoken. It will be said on that day, this This is our God. We have waited for him so that he might save us. This is the Lord for whom we have waited. Let us be glad and rejoice in his salvation. Amen.